All right, we are back after a not so brief hiatus. It is Load the Box. It is Jordan Hawthorne and Will Goodwin, joined by, I'm going to say the best friend of the show, Dustin Baker, back for his second appearance on the show, and also second cut of the night because of some fun technical difficulties. Gentlemen, let's see. I'm trying to make sure that we touch on everything. New baby bad news. Congratulations to Will. That was part of the reason for the break. Also other reasons. But, I mean, let's just dive right into it. We have a lot of stuff to talk about we haven't covered on this channel quite yet. So let's talk about Adam Thielen and Eric Kendricks, the two staple pieces of the Vikings 2010s, offense and defense respectively. They're no longer here. Dustin, for the second time tonight, let's hear what you think about these cuts.
Sure, gentlemen. So I do this for a job now, writing about the Vikings, and the moment that I made the 4-hour trip from Minneapolis back to South Dakota, where I live, I had to start thinking about next steps for the team. In previous years as a fan, I might have just sulked and said, damn Vikings. But this year, you just brush it off, and immediately you start roster crunching. And in my head, Kendricks and Thielen were foregone conclusions to depart. And our pal Will here even wrote on VikingsTerritory.com a thank you, a goodbye to Adam Thielen. Like a few days after the season, I was like, oh boy, he knows what's coming. And so I've emotionally accepted their departures about 2 months ago. So it was a formality or fruition that they were released. For Kendricks, it was 2 weeks ago, and then Thielen about a week and a half. And this is what happens when you have backloaded contracts from the previous regime. The chickens come home to roost, and the new guys have to decide if they're worth it or if you have to get younger, more affordable, and faster. And Kendricks and Thielen emphatically don't fit any of those criterion. So it was time to pivot away. And thankfully, for those guys' sake, they've now got new sexy homes, especially Kendricks, who can probably contend for the playoffs. And Thielen has kind of a head scratcher in Carolina, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, we can dig into that a little bit. I'm just curious from your perspective, Dustin, what you thought. And Jordan, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because we had a little bit of back and forth on this earlier today. But what we thought about that Carolina move for Thielen, it seemed maybe a little bit, like you said, head scratching.
Yeah, it was weird when I saw the notification yesterday because, like, every wise veteran who you think has earned enough money to be set for the rest of their lives if they manage it wisely will usually go chase fancy ring hardware. So I thought he would go to a team that he had previous ties to, and that would be George Payton and the Broncos, who could be good if Sean Payton and Russell Wilson get this thing going, or the Browns, who have Kevin Stefanski, who Thielen worked with for 7 seasons altogether, and maybe in the Chiefs, because that's a guaranteed AFC championship. But no, he picked like one of the one teams that's guaranteed not to be in the mix unless CJ Stroud or Bryce Young is the second coming. So it was a quintessential money grab, and I think it's a spot for him to prove that he can still get 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns, because he'll get the targets there if he doesn't get hurt. But that's not because he's in the prime of his career. That's because the rest of the dudes are just kind of meh, with Terrence Marshall and Laviska Shenault and Shai Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna jump in just really quickly. I don't know if anybody here or anybody listening is a fan of professional wrestling, but you'll see things about professional wrestling where two guys will brutalize each other, put each other through tables, hit each other with chairs, call each other, everything but the kitchen sink. And then they'll come back behind the curtain and they'll start hugging it out, and they'll be like, oh, we love you. So that's gonna be me with Adam Thielen for a minute, because I'm gonna say some hateful things, because I need to get some things off my chest. But I love him. He's a great Viking. He is a guy, I feel like everyone on Twitter says this about every player that's ever played for the Vikings for more than 2 seasons. It's like, oh, sign him to a 1-day contract when he retires. And I feel like that doesn't happen as much as you expect it to. Thielen is one of those guys, he should retire as a Viking because he will always be a Viking. But it really makes you think about all these interviews he does where he's like, I don't care about the ball, I just want to win. It really makes me think, do you want to win, Mr. Thielen? Because, it seems like you're going to a team that just traded their wide receiver 1. You have no idea who the QB is going to be. You're going from Cousins to Andy Dalton as your quarterback, and you're just going to a team that's kind of been bad or mediocre the last few seasons. And yes, they have, the number 1 pick now, and they're going to get their quarterback, but you're signing up to play with a first-year quarterback. You're not getting any younger. It just is it, like you said, it seems like an opportunity for him to get some stats, get some cash, and put his name a little bit higher in the total yardage for a career type category or something like that. And I actually was listening to like an old interview he did with it was back, I think it was like 2016 or 17, and they were asking him like about like Stephon Diggs was on like a hot streak or something, and they asked Thielen about how he felt about this hot streak, and he was like, oh, I love it. I love seeing us win games. I don't care about the ball. I don't want to, I don't care about stats, blah blah blah, and it just, I don't know. He just seems like another wide receiver. They care about money and stats. They're not really chasing rings, it doesn't feel like. So I don't know. Will, I know that none of us are shocked by these, but what's your Thielen take?
I don't need to say a whole lot on it. I think, like Dustin said, I wrote a thank you letter to him. I'm grateful for his 10 years. I mean, he shocked all of us, right? Like, no one expected this skinny little kid from Detroit Lakes to be a Vikings Ring of Honor guy, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable, and even when I did write that Thielen piece, I went back and did a little more digging on his career and some of his, previous highlights, some of his previous stats. The things he did in the prime of his career, I think we forget, because the last couple of years have been overshadowed by Justin Jefferson and Thielen declining, and he was a legitimate wide receiver one for a couple of years there. And his ability to make contested catches, his ability to stretch the field. He was aggressive at the point of attack. All these things that I think we've lost sight of in his declining performance. But really, it's just I'm grateful for it. He was a lot of fun to watch. It gives kids in small towns across Minnesota hopefully a little bit of hope that if they have a dream, they can pursue it. And whether it's on an athletic field or in something else. So he's a great Minnesota success story. And his next move was surprising, I think, but also best of luck to him. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to put you guys on the spot just super quickly, and then we can move on. Do you guys have a favorite Adam Thielen memory? Because there's one that jumps out in my mind as like the absolute favorite memory of mine. And it's the fake punt against Green Bay in the 2015 season. Yeah, the 2015 season. I think technically it was the year 2016, but I watched it. It was me and Delaney had been dating for like 2 months, and that's my wife. If you guys don't know that, I should probably. Me and my wife had just started dating a couple months earlier. We were watching it in my brother's apartment, like just piled up on a couch or whatever, just watching it with him, and it was just. I don't know. It's like my favorite Adam Thielen memory was that fake punt. Do you guys have a favorite Thielen memory?
Yeah, mine is, I guess, cliche. It's the Saints game of 2019 season, so January 2020. That moment where he caught the Cousins bomb that would set up the Rudolph touchdown was so cool because it didn't feel like the Zimmer way, just taking a stab, like rolling the dice in the first, like, what was it, second or third play of overtime? Maybe it was a couple plays into the drive. Yeah. But it was such a ballsy thing to do on offense. And the throw was perfect, and then it just fit in right over his shoulder. And when we were going into overtime, I think my Viking cynicism crept up, thinking, how are we going to mess this up? And then when he caught that, I was like, God, we can't mess this up. So it'll be that moment. And one parting little story on Thielen is it took me until the 2018 run with he and Cousins, where he was, the first 8 games, most blah, blah, blahs through blah, 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 for me to really believe that he was here to stay. During the 2017 run, I kept thinking, all right, well, is he the real deal? And the same thing, that big game he had in 2015 in the season, I just thought, well, anybody can do that if you're playing garbage time. 2016, he was certainly good, but I was like, all right, people are going to figure him out. And then 2017, I kept thinking, God, this guy's actually pretty good. And then I couldn't deny it any longer in 2018. So it took me a long time to realize that he was like a top 12 wide receiver, and who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Saints catch, too, a fun tidbit about that. I think that was the play that made Marshawn Lattimore punch his teammate and get pulled out of the game. Oh, no, maybe it was the play before that, and so Latimer
Like it was the play before that.
Yeah, so my bad. It was the play before Latimer punched his teammate, got pulled from the game, and then immediately the Thielen catch. That's one of my favorite tidbits of history right there. Will, you got a favorite Thielen moment?
It's one of those two, frankly. Yeah, I don't remember his first NFL touchdown quite as well, but it was that blocked punt, I think, against Chicago. Was it Chicago?
I thought it was Carolina.
Maybe it was Carolina, oddly enough.
It was Carolina.
But yeah, that was just kind of fun because that was like the Thielen special teams grunt period of his career. But I think frankly to not go cliche, for me it's the Green Bay punt the fake punt because I remember distinctly Al Michaels sounding surprised at his own self saying Adam Thielen's name on the broadcast. He's like, "Oh, a wide receiver named Adam Thielen comes out of the pack with the ball," and that was kind of the moment he burst onto the scene. So, yeah, a lot of good memories.
His catch against Green Bay with Cousins, it went through two Green Bay that was a nuts play. That's a play that we tied that game. Am I correct?
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, that was the Daniel Carlson game.
Yeah, and that was a fun one as well.
When he was wrapping it up there, and I guess maybe not last year, but in 2019, 2020, 21, those little one-handers that he'd have in the red zone were incredible. And that's another thing we took for granted with him was just that, a lot of good receivers can do that. And not really, just those one hand. There was one that I don't know who was against where the ball just kind of flipped right here on his elbow. And you're like, oh, he caught it. Neat.
Yeah.
I have a meme somewhere on my phone. I actually was cleaning out space the other day and I saw it and I made this meme of it was Randy mossing somebody and then I just underneath it was the Peter Palco where he takes his glasses off and puts them back on. And so it was that and it was the glasses off was Randy Moss and the glasses on. It was Adam Thielen doing the exact same thing. So one of the greatest Vikings receivers, one of the best NFL stories I think of all time. Sorry, Eric Kendricks, you were my favorite Viking of my life, and you are getting zero airtime. But I wish him the best of luck as well. Let's see. You want to talk about some signings? Some signings?
Maybe one just quick hitter question. We cut Kendricks and Thielen, and we waived Dantzler. Are there any surprising non-cuts in your guys' opinions? People that you thought would have been cut that aren't.
Yeah, that's for stuff that I think about every day for sure. CJ Ham still on the team surprises me because his cap hit is $3.8 million, and he's either the best locker room guy you could ever dream of, or they really like his special teams because he only played 15% of snaps, and the only other team that uses a fullback, to my knowledge, is the 49ers. So he could still be jettisoned, I'm guessing, and then they could save a little bit. But it just seems like he's the last of a dying breed, and I thought he would be one of the first. And then Kendricks coming back, I thought he and
you mean Hicks?
Hicks. Hicks coming back. I thought he and Kendricks would be a package deal departing. But once you start to realize that Brian Flores is in charge and kind of a big linebacker, I don't know that Hicks is guaranteed to start because we haven't seen an NFL draft yet. They could very well draft Trenton Simpson or Drew Sanders. We don't know. And so Hicks could be a depth guy. But when you saw that juicy $5 million in salary cap savings, if they would have cut Hicks, that felt automatic when you're trying to get up to $20 million in spending room. So right now, for me, CJ, it wasn't a surprise to me that Alexander Madison came back in free agency. And then also just the fact that we're on Zadarius and Dalvin watch. That's a little weird because those are two heavy hitter names that made a serious impact last year.
I saw the Dalvin news. I saw it was somebody reported the Vikings have no interest of trading Dalvin Cook. He's playing on the team in 23, and I immediately was just that's not true. They do have some interest in trading him. I think they're floating that out that we don't have any interest in trade to try and drive the price up a little bit. I still don't expect Cook to be a Viking next season. This isn't a cut, and it's not really. I don't know that we're going to get to talk about him. The Cousins restructure was really weird to me because it did I'm gonna not steal, but I'm just gonna bring up something from another well-known Vikings podcast. it did feel like the Vikings were taking 2023 as like a, hey, we're going to eat all the dead cap now, and next season we're going to have a lot of cap space, and we're going to get younger, and we're going to sign a bunch of free agents. And then they restructured Cousins' deal to put money into, like, not put years on the contract, just put void years. So we're going to pay Cousins for, I think, the next 2 seasons. And it was just kind of strange to me the way they did it. I thought that if they did anything with the contract, it would be like a 1-year extension. And so it was just kind of funny to me. And I didn't text this into the thing, but Dustin, I wanted to get your kind of opinion. Where do you think the Vikings are sitting? Do you think that a quarterback is getting taken in the draft? And if so, do you think they're going to look in like rounds 2 or 3, or do you think they're moving up to go get Will Levis?
Well, I think the first problem was the talker in general that said 2024 is their new holy grail, because 2023 was never going to be just this piece of shit year that we're going to roll over and die, because they just hired Brian Flores, who is the ultimate one and done defensive coordinator. And you already have a nucleus that won 13 games. So you're going to stare at Kevin O'Connell in the face and be like, yeah, you won 13 games. That was a fraud, dude. So now we're going to tear it down. You don't do that to a guy who just won the division in his first year. So when that talker was proliferated that said, oh, yeah, they're clearing cap space for 2024, and we're basically conceding 2023, I call bullshit on that immediately, because that's not Vikings football. Yeah. Even if you want it to be a full rebuild, they don't do that. And then the general manager, all he says every single day he's in a microphone is, we're doing a competitive rebuild. He's telling you what he's doing. They're not going to just rip it down to the depths of hell for 1 year to get good. He said at the combine, tanking is unconscionable. And so they're not going to do that. So when they pushed Cousins' money into 2024, that was further proof that they're not just mailing it in for 2023. However, on the topic of quarterback, I am of the firm idea that they have to draft a quarterback, because they have this precious season right now where the Vikings can be like the Chiefs from 2017 or the forever Packers, where you have the luxury of letting a guy marinate for a single season when you kind of have the writing on the wall that Cousins is going out the door at this time next year. So, but and Kwesi also said at the combine that doing the quarterback scouting is not just throwing darts at a board and saying, you know what, we're going to go with Jaren Hall, baby. No, you scout the guy that you fall in love with. So that's what they're doing right now. Yes, I could see them at some point, because the Vikings are never going to go 3-14. They're going to have to trade a lot to get their quarterback of the future. So it doesn't really matter if that's now or it's next year. I'd prefer it to be now. So if they fall in love with Anthony Richardson, they fall in love with Levis, then I'll say go ahead and do it. Because if we just wait till next year, there's more of a chance that next year is a rebuild than this year, because Cousins won't be on the roster. You're staring down perhaps at a new depth chart, the quarterback that says Nick Mullins and nobody. So all of this smoke about 2024 is the new year, baby. I think that would be the possible rebuild year, if any. I hope they take a stab at some sort of quarterback. The only problem is, and if you guys study the draft, it's gruesome when you get past the first round. It's guys that are all 25, and you're like, what? We're going to do the rookie quarterback, and this is the 1 year where all the second and third and fourth rounders are 24 and 25 and going to be 26. I'm like, gross. So I've talked myself into Clayton Tune as the guy that they could get in the 6th or 7th round.
I love Clayton Tune.
But this ultimately comes down to right now, Kevin O'Connell primarily knows whether it's Levis, Richardson, or none, like who they want. And it's really irrelevant to us for us to be like, well, they should go get Richardson. All that matters is who they've circled right now in Egan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll pass it off to you. If you have any thoughts on that, you can take it and run. If you don't and you just want to move on, we can just move on. It's up to you.
Cool. Yeah, let's bounce to another topic. I think new signings from the offseason that I think people have got at least remotely excited about have mainly been defensive, right? You know, we've shored up a few depth pieces on the offensive line, and brought in some guys like Josh Oliver to do, a little blocking on the tight end spot. We can talk about that move, but I'm more curious about the Marcus Davenport and the Byron Murphy signings, because for one thing, it might signal something about what this team is going to look like defensively. The Zadarius Smith stuff, I think, plays right into the Davenport signing, because Davenport could potentially just be a replacement for Smith. But then on the other hand, it's sort of a prove-it deal. He has had a lot of injuries, but he's got potential. So he's a very interesting and hopefully high upside guy. But anything from that signing particular, either of you, Jordan or Dustin, that is maybe extra juicy that you've been thinking about beyond just the straight, just we got an outside linebacker?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Davenport is super interesting to me because I have this thing where I just think that if a physically gifted pass rusher plays with like an elite level pass rusher, he's just gonna learn all the tips and tricks from the elite level guy. And so with Danielle Hunter, being on this team, and I think he will continue to be on this team, in 2023 and beyond, I just feel like Davenport is gonna learn from Danielle. And that really revs my engine. The idea of Marcus Davenport, who in a similar situation to Zadarius Smith, is a guy who he's all right when he's on the field. He can't stay, he has some health issues or concerns. If he stays healthy and can learn a couple tips or tricks from Danielle Hunter, I think we're talking about a really nice athlete that could really tone into like a surprise duo. I think last season it was really expected for the Vikings to have Vikings fans at least. I thought we all thought we were going to have like the best defensive line in football, at least pass rush wise, because of Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. It was like, who's going to stop them? And for a while it kind of looked that way. But with Davenport, I think now expectations are tempered, so maybe we'll see him just come out of the gate hot, red hot, and Davenport can finally get those sack numbers up and also stay healthy, because that kind of seems like the biggest issue with him is the health. So that's my 2 cents.
It'll always be weird to me that Mike Zimmer left this team, and down the stretch of his career and then after, we're trying to fix a defense. The offense, we're just like, oh, that's cool, we'll sign a blocking tight end, we'll be fine, that's all we need. It should be the other way around if you were to write a script, but it's not. It's really weird, so I want to point that out. But with Davenport, I think his problem is consistency in terms of doing what he does on a per game basis. The way that I've studied up and talked to Saints fans is that you never knew if it was going to be a Davenport game or not. And when you draft a guy in the first round, you shouldn't just have that. It's almost like they're Bradbury, where he's got a first round draft stock and you just want him every game to be a first round edge rusher. But he does have the tools, and I'll be saying this a lot in the next 6 months. If Brian Flores trusted it, and I'm guessing he signed off on it or endorsed it, then it's more than fine by me. And I do think Zadarius is ultimately traded, and that's not rocket science. He already said goodbye to everybody about 2 weeks ago now. But I really do think it'll feel again like just running it back with Zadarius and Hunter, but this time it'll be Hunter and Davenport. And if he balls out, he can be extended, but really it's you don't have much to lose because it's 1 year and $13 million. It was also weird that he was like PFF's top edge rusher, and somehow the rebuilding Vikings got him. And I'm doing that with quotes. It's anybody that's listening on audio.
What's also crazy is I feel like if you like look at the PFF, PFF is so hit and miss for me. Like, though, I feel like I'm the guy who says PFF stats when I want to be correct, and it backs up my argument. But the second they dispute my argument, I'm just like, PFF's nobody. Like, I don't buy into. I'm an eye test guy. Me, yeah, QB wins an eye test. That's me. But like, I do think that PFF can be kind of tricky because like, if you look at Davenport's stats, like if you just ask like a guy, who you're having a beer with, like, do you see the Vikings got Marcus Davenport? And they pull up his stats. I think he had like half a sack last season. But then you look at his pressures and they're through the roof. And it's like, oh, this guy must be really good.
Yeah.
He just can't finish the playoff. But it's, there are some people that think pressures are more important than just getting a sack. So it's kind of it depends on what school of thought you come from, I guess. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where I stand. I think it's a good signing because of the value proposition of like, oh yeah, we got him cheap. If he hits, he's a huge hit. If he doesn't, who cares? It's a 1 year deal. He can be a depth guy. Like,
The no matter how you dice it, dress it up, rationalize it, justify it, 0.5 sacks for a starting edge rusher sucks.
Yeah.
And I mean, Stephen Weatherly did more than that. And so it's very weird no matter what happens. I am one of those that agrees that pressures are more indicative of how good an edge rusher is. So maybe if the sack total was like 6, I could be like, yeah, who cares? He'll get 10 this year. But 0.5 is a little weird. On the PFF stuff, I use them as a baseline because I think they're mostly consistent. But I tell you what, when I looked up from my screen the Monday or Tuesday after the Vikings come back over the Colts, and PFF talking heads are trying to tell me that Kirk Cousins didn't do much during that second half, I felt like the Twilight Zone. I was like, how are we doing this? Like, the guy had 35 passing yards in 2 quarters and 4 touchdowns. And Sam Munson from PFF said he didn't do much. And I'm like, why do we do this? It's okay to say that he wasn't legendary, but to say he didn't do much was buffoonish.
And this is where the basic, like, the basic guy in the bow, like, he'd be like, well, Kirk Cousins threw a pick in the second half. How good did he really play? And it's like, did you watch throughout that Jalen Rago ran? Or should I say stopped running? That he was just like, oh, this ball's not coming to me. And then Cousins is like, come on, buddy, it's your time to shine. Like, and so, that PFF.
It was basically that game, those 2 routes that he ran are the whole reason that none of us care about him being anywhere near a WR2 or WR3 anymore. We just kind of expect him to be cut, and it was a shitty trade. It was because of that game.
Yeah. The other interesting and hopefully impactful move that the Vikings made was for their second Arizona Cardinals defensive back signing in the last 3 years, who will probably also wear number 7, by the way. Byron Murphy. He's a versatile guy. He's played both in the slot and on the outside, which is good. I think Brian Flores will probably like that, speaking into his sort of I like versatile guys thing that he said in his opening press conference. What does this do for the Vikings cornerback room now? Dantzler's gone, Peterson's gone, Duke Shelley is still floating around in the stratosphere. Right now, the cornerback room looks a little bit odd. It's Murphy and a bunch of young guys. So where are we at, and what else needs to be added?
I'm glad they got him because of, he is attitudinal. He's in your face. He craves the opposing team's best receiver. We love it. But right now, it's not enough. Now, this can be fixed 5 minutes from now if they sign Duke Shelley. And then you have a guy who has a chip on his shoulder to prove that he wasn't a one-hit wonder. Even if Dantzler was still around, I could talk myself into being like, all right, we got about 4 kind of one starting guy for sure and 3 others. But right now, it's 2 injury-prone second-year defenders and Evans and Booth, and you're like, all right, well, we're putting a lot of confidence in these guys showing up and being ballers. They could both be hurt again. And then Murphy. So I was hoping they'd get Sean Murphy bunting and do the Murphy game for the slot, but he went to the Titans today. And so now they're kind of running out of options. And I know this is a deep cornerback draft class, but if you're going to draft a corner in round 3, that guy is not going to for sure start week 1. So I'm a little paranoid that without Duke Shelley coming back or without signing one more guy, maybe William Jackson from the Steelers, I'm on pins and needles because yes, Booth and Evans could be fantastic in time, but in August, none of us are going to know that.
I think that Booth is there's a lot of chips on Andrew Booth. If you want to kind of do like a Vegas gambling reference, there's a lot of money on him. There's I think they traded up to get him in the second round. He was a guy coming out last season that I was absolutely infatuated with. I thought he was going to go in the first round. I have said many times I thought Andrew Booth Jr. saved the draft for me because I didn't like the Scene pick. And then they moved back up and they got Booth, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, they should have just taken Booth in the first round and then taken Scene in the second. I wouldn't have complained at all. So that kind of saved it. Booth looked bad in his few snaps or few plays that he had before he got injured, which is also his big concern is the injuries. But I think just talking about the defensive backs, we got to get Duke Shelley in here like ASAP. I don't.
Why haven't they done it?
I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know if he is. And look, I said before free agency began, I thought that, like, I didn't get the impression that Duke Shelley was going to be like, I want the big contract now. I played half a good season, pay me. I didn't get that impression. I still don't know that I get that impression. He's talking about betting on himself, and he's talking about doing all this. So maybe he wants, like, maybe it's more a link thing. Like, he's asking for, like, a 3 or 4 year deal, and the Vikings are like, can we just bring you in on, like, a 1 year deal? Like, we'll say it's a 5 year deal, but, like, can we just make it a 1 year guaranteed deal so we can cut ties if you end up stinking? But I definitely think that they need to get Shelley back in here, and I'd feel a lot better about, Murphy and Shelley. I'm not all out on Andrew Booth, but you can't go into week 1 with a defensive back who is his knock coming out was he can't stay healthy. And what did he do in his first season? He stunk and he got injured. Like, that guy can't be penciled in as a starter right now. And it's kind of nerve-wracking. And every day we get closer, every day we go without signing Duke Shelley, I'm like, oh yeah, they're taking a defensive back in the first round. Like, they're going to do that. They have to at this point. Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting. We'll kind of see what happens.
I mean, honestly, I feel like where I sit, if the season started tomorrow and this was our cornerback depth, I think a Caleb Evans has to start. Mm-hmm. I mean, if he's healthy, like I like you said, Jordan, we didn't see enough from Booth, and he's oft injured, and not that Evans wasn't hurt too, but I'm a big Caleb Evans guy, but at the same time, he showed a little bit more grit, a little bit more ability to play at the NFL level when he got a chance. So obviously Booth hardly was able to see the field. So off-season work, training camp, all that, would love to see what he can do to get to that next level. But like you said, Dustin, I don't think this can be the squad that we go roll out there with. And also, we haven't even really talked about the slot.
I was about ready to say that. Yeah, right now we're talking about just 3 bodies that are startable. Well, they'd all have to play right now.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing Murphy would go in the slot, and then you'd have Booth and Evans.
It's not what you want.
No,
right?
No, those guys would get eaten for lunch by a decent receiving core, I think, right now. Until I see a preseason that tells me otherwise.
Yeah, and do you really want to put your best cornerback in the slot most of the time? And, the NFL has gotten to the place where receivers are lining up all over the place, and so you can't necessarily take advantage of the matchup with a bad slot corner as much as you would. But at the same token, you can take advantage of a bad outside corner if you don't have one out there. So, it's head scratching. I would love to see, at least as an experiment. I have no belief that this would necessarily, be a home run, but I'd like to see what Cam Bynum could do in the slot again. Because we'll have Smith back. Hopefully Lewis Seen is ready to roll, and those guys playing safety, and then Josh Metellus backing them up, and then Cam Bynum as an emergency option. But I don't know. I'd love to see what he could do in the slot because we need depth there. He played it in college. I don't know. That's kind of a pie in the sky hope that I have, but
that feels like one of those things that you hear happening in training camp is like Cam Bynum is playing in the slot now, and he's looking and Vikings fans start getting excited, but I just feel like that is we get excited about it in preseason, and then week 1 he just gets blown up and he just gets destroyed, for lack of a better phrase, and we're like, oh no, we don't have a slot corner, do we? And we start panicking about the defense again.
On your point, Jordan, about, each morning you wake up and we're running out of time. I mean, we really are, unless you want old Marcus Peters, old William Jackson. Then there's Shaquille Griffin, which would be intriguing. There is Eli Apple. I don't know if he fits, his personality fits on the team. Duke Shelley, Rock Ya-Sin, bringing back Chandon Sullivan. I mean, these are it. Logan Ryan, he's old, but he's out there. So it's either you get your shit together and get Shaquille Griffin, who's in his prime of his career, or go trade for somebody. We're getting down to nubbins for this plan again. But then again, like I said, in 10 minutes, we wrap up the show. 10 minutes, Duke Shelley comes back, then we can all breathe because we know he can start.
Yeah. No, I've been a big proponent of, hey, why Duke Shelley, get him in here. He's good. He was good last. It wasn't like I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he was just like the bright shiny piece of a giant piece of poop, because like that defense was really bad, and it was like, oh, but he was good, and then. He might be the worst part of a good defense, maybe. I don't know. I can talk about
all
Dick
of
Shelley
this.
for days.
All of this is after you electively waived Cameron Dantzler, and he wasn't like some big expensive guy that was clogging up the salary cap. You said we don't want Dantzler here anymore, and then you haven't signed Patrick Peterson. You haven't re-signed Duke Shelley. You haven't re-signed Shannon Sullivan. That's 4 human bodies that left, and you brought one guy in. So yeah, they need at least 1 or 2 more corners that they trust for week 1.
Was it Kwesi or was it Kevin O'Connell that, like, after the draft last season was talking about, not Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, and he was like, I was scouting, somebody late at night. Yeah, and he was like, I saw, a Caleb Evans, and I was like, why is nobody talking about this guy? And, like, he fell in love with him, and maybe Kwesi's, like, really putting chips in on a Caleb Evans it's a Caleb Evans, and it's, it's Byron Murphy. I almost said Sean Murphy Bunting because that's there's too many Murphys. It's Murphy, it's Evans, and then maybe Booth factors in. I have no idea what they're gonna do.
But the problem is if he stayed up scouting him at night, he was right. He looked great against the Commanders, great against the Bills. If he breaks his ankle in the 3rd preseason game, then you're going to Tay Gowan and Kalon Barnes, and that ain't gonna work. That's the biggest problem, is that we had some depth. At least theoretical depth, with maybe bringing Peterson back, maybe bringing Shelley back. Dantzler's under contract, but all that's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like it's an emergent need, in my opinion.
Let's talk about the most electric free agency signing of any of our lives, as the Vikings go out and get the best blocking tight end in football, Josh Oliver. I've never seen Vikings Twitter so mad than when Kwesi, the defense is just Swiss cheese and everybody's, either a free agent, or they're old, or they're bad, or whatever the case is. And he says, you know what, Josh Oliver, put your name on the dotted line. You're coming to Minnesota, baby. I like the signing a lot, actually, which maybe I'm just saying that to be controversial, but I want to get your guys' take on what you thought.
Well, quick thing here, Jordan. We're running up against the clock here. We only got about 60 seconds left, so...
I believe that is fake news. I upgraded the Zoom. We should be good on time.
All right. All right, Dustin, go give your thoughts here.
Oh yeah, it was hilarious because of Jordan's setup there. It was hilarious that 7 years, 21 million Viking splash is there, baby. That was hilarious because I think every one of us that follow this stuff obsessively agreed that the things that we don't need are an offensive tackle and a tight end. And that was it. No bother with any of those guys. And then it was a tight end, the very first thing. It almost felt like a tackle was on the way too. Of course, no, there was no tackle. But yeah, once you warm up to it and you look at you peel back the curtain on the deal, it's not 7 years, 21 million, 3 years and 21 million. It's not breaking the bank. It's just like the rest of these deals. You're going to figure out if he's worth it in year 1. And I'm convinced that because he does the ugly part of football, that by October, blah, 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 you're going to be like, this guy was a pretty sweet signing. He really makes the offense tick, especially if CJ Ham isn't there anymore. It's also a signal that Kevin O'Connell recognizes that, I'm a former quarterback, and I love to throw the ball, but we actually need to run sometimes and keep the time of possession reasonable. Every time I compile weekly Viking stats for the website, time of possession was underwater. And most football teams that are worth their salt end up in the green for time of possession. And it's not rocket science. It's you get a lead, and then you can just finish the game out, almost like Zimmer ball. But the Vikings never did that. That's why they were 11-0 in one-score games. So I like the Oliver signing. I wasn't a doomsdayist. But it was just very funny that was the first one.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, in my pre-show notes to you guys, I kind of jokingly titled the Josh Oliver section as "What's the point of the Josh Oliver signing?" Yeah, it's a little bit funny, but I think you make excellent points, Dustin, in that this is sort of a depth signing but also fills in a crack that the team has not had. And Jordan, I think your thoughts to me after we signed him were, Kevin finally realized he just needs to run the damn ball, and so I think there's good to it. Fans like sexy, big splashy moves, and Josh Oliver is not any of those things. But those kind of players are what help you get over the hump. One quick thing that just wanted to mention as well, with all of this sort of, money flying around and people getting cut and people getting signed, Harrison Smith restructured his deal so that we save a little cap space for this season. And I think it's huge. I mean, I think, there was news of, after I think Dantzler was gone and after Kendricks and Thielen were cut, there was rumblings of that Smith was the next man out. And I think we were all surprised at that rumor, just frankly, given how everyone is, talking about the match made in heaven that Smith and Flores were. Dustin, from your perspective, how big of a impact does this, quote unquote pay cut bring to the Vikings? Is it big, or is it sort of just a inconsequential, we have to get under the cap before the league year started sort of move?
No, I think it is consequential because Brian Flores is in the house. And if you want to utilize, especially yesteryear, Harrison Smith, what he's good at, and that's aggression and being a blitz hefty safety, this is the time to do it. And it's kind of cool that either in his last or second to last season, he'll be unleashed. It was also kind of bittersweet or poetic that after Thielen said sayonara because he wouldn't take a pay cut, Harrison Smith did. And I don't know, there's something about the emotional tie to Harrison Smith to me that will be more devastating when he retires or walks than Adam Thielen. And I don't know if that's just because I like defense more than I like offense. I'm weird like that. But yeah, to me, and maybe it's because Harrison Smith's been around for an extra 2 regular seasons, but something about when I thought that Harrison Smith might walk there after those rumors, I was like, well, I'm not ready for this. I don't want to think about this. I'm not going to watch him play in a Chargers uniform or something like that. So I'm glad he's back. I hope that he has a Greenway-esque ending to his career where he can finish with purple and gold on. And I think you'll see. And you guys remember when he was out in the last 2 seasons, the Vikings defense looked like idiots. And he's not the same dude that he was in 2016 or 2017, but he's a difference maker. And then had you lost him, oh, great, we need a safety now too, because otherwise we're going with Bynum and Scene. And we think Scene will be good. Same thing with Booth and all the rest of the guys. We think this 2022 draft class is going to pan out, but we don't know. So I'm glad he's back because he hedges the bet for depth in Flores secondary.
He's just a smart player too. Mm-hmm. Like the defense falling off a cliff was partly his ability to make plays, but part of it is also just he knows what he's doing and he's communicating with everybody pre-snap. And despite all of the dysfunction of the Ed Donatel defense, losing your 30-plus-year-old safety had a big impact. I think the other just you mentioned sort of the emotional tie to Harrison Smith. The other thing that is I think adds to that, at least for me, is that he's just always been sort of a steadying presence. Mm-hmm. The teams that we cheer for, the teams that we follow, the teams that pay attention to, the teams that succeed tend to have people on the team, whatever sport, and in football on both sides of the ball, that can calm everybody down when everything is going wrong. Mm-hmm. And watching Vikings games over the last decade, seeing number 22 just kind of run around in the backfield before the snap, or in the secondary, was always sort of just like okay, we have Harrison Smith. Sort of like he's there, he's not going to make a boneheaded play. He's never going to get too overexcited. Even when they do like the bowling pin celebrations, he doesn't really smile very much. He's sort of just like, he does the things, he makes the plays. That play when he broke up the pass to Stephon Diggs in the fourth quarter in Buffalo on 3rd and 15 or whatever, up the left sideline, got the Vikings the ball back before the ridiculous Jefferson catch. I think that was the most emotion I've seen out of Harrison Smith. He popped up and pumped his fist and flung his helmet off. And I think that was the first time I'd ever seen him just go crazy after a big play. So anyway, steadying presence. You love to have it on your back end. Jordan, I cut you off when I jumped in.
No. So I'm going to be honest. This is the one time I wish you didn't cut me off, because my Harrison Smith take is a lot more like, yeah, I was expecting to get rid of him. I was like, we were talking, I think we played a game of, cut, extend, trade, whatever, let him walk. I can't remember what we titled it, but we kind of played that game and Harrison Smith's name came up and I was like, if it was me, I would keep him because everything that you guys said is true. He's Harrison flippin' Smith, man. He should retire a Viking. Like, he's a Gold Domo. He's a Hawthorne Viking too, because we're Notre Dame fans and we're Vikings fans. So like him and Rudolph left, and it broke my father's heart. But Harrison Smith, you just invested first round draft capital in a safety that I feel like everybody's been saying is gonna take Harrison Smith's job, and so it's like, okay, Smith is back, so now like Lewis Cine has to stout. It has to be him and Smith, because like you can't have a first round pick just ride the pine unless he's still injured. But if he's healthy, he can't just ride the pine because we've got Harrison Smith. Then why in the HE double hockey sticks did you take him? If you didn't think he was going to contribute to your team, like at some point the draft picks have to play, and so especially the first rounders. So I wasn't shocked that we kept him. I'm really glad that we kept him, but I'm in this boat now where I'm like, okay, yeah, Bynum can't. I don't care how good of a camp Bynum has. Like, Cine needs to get out there, and if Cine doesn't get out there, I think this season he's a bust. Like at least I'm gonna say he's a bust because the coaching staff does not think he has the talent. He has developed to the level to be an NFL player. And you spent, again, I'm gonna say this, a first round draft pick whenever you could have you could have not traded back. And yes, we got picks for trading back, but we could have had Jamison Williams. Even if we traded back, we could have taken Christian Watson. We could have had like a certified wide receiver 2 from last year's draft. And wide receivers just the thing. We could have had a ton of positions that were taken.
We could have got your guy Kyle Hamilton.
Well, I don't want to talk about Kyle Hamilton because that was
Notre Dame, baby.
Yeah, that was the Cat P hat story. And I was livid about that. And so I need to see Cine. I still have full confidence in Lewis Cine. So much so I haven't called him Andrew Cine one time tonight, and that's kind of my thing. So I don't know. I'm excited and hopeful that we get to see Smith and Cine just running the safety duo, and I think that could be a potent safety duo because both of them have a similar style of play. Like Cine, I think, has a little bit more coverage in him, but Cine can come down and play that heavy hitting, don't come over the middle type of role. And I'm excited to see that. So that's the reason I wanted to extend. Dustin, I'm so sorry for going late tonight.
No, it's all good.
I felt like it would be a major disservice for 3 Vikings fans to get together, wearing purple hats, and not talk about Harrison Smith. That felt a little nasty. Whenever we talked about Josh Oliver, it's like we got to give Hitman his due. So that is the last that I think I have. Will or Dustin, if you guys have any soap blocks, what is it? Soapboxes that you want to stand on. I couldn't think of it. If you have any soapboxes you want to stand on and proclaim something to the skies, feel free to do it now. But I think I'm ready to exit when you guys are.
In each draft, the last 2, I always circle a player that I want if he falls there. And if I would have gotten my way the last 2 years, you guys would like me. It was Micah Parsons. I wanted him because I knew Barr and Kendricks were winding down. And then last year, close your ears, Jordan, it was Kyle Hamilton because I didn't think he would fall past Washington, and he did. This year, that guy for me is Brian Brees. So if he falls to 23, which it feels like he might, I think we can finally, for the first time since Sharif Floyd in 2013, get a guy who's good in the middle of the defense and not a bunch of Shamar Stevens. So that's who I'm eyeing right now. I always find the defensive guy. I will not be upset one iota if it's a wide receiver because out of the 5 or however many are, I think there's 5. There should be at least 2 for the Vikings to choose from. But again, I'll say this every show I come on, I fully expect that pick to be traded. 23rd pick.
I have to disagree with you on the Brian Brees, but I agree with you on the position, and this is going to be fun as you hopefully come on the show, through the next few years. We can kind of see how Brees stacks up to my guy, who I don't think is even going to get out of the top 10. Kalijah Kancey at a Pitt is one of the biggest draft crushes I've had in a very long time.
Ooh, okay.
I am a huge Kalijah Kancey fan, and if he is there, if he's there like 3 picks before the Vikings pick, get up there. Move up there, man. I don't care. Sign Cousins to an 8-year extension. I don't care. Like, Cousins can be quarterback forever, and KJ Osborne can be wide receiver too. We have Kalijah Cansey on the defense, causing havoc. So I'll have to pencil that in my notes, and we'll have to keep track of their careers as they progress. Wherever they end up.
The last thing that I have is that we are on, because there was no Cousins extension, we're on a steady march. I can't remember if I said this on the show last time, a steady march to the next quarterback. And whether that guy is picked in 5 weeks or a year and 5 weeks, everything about the Vikings enterprise, as you know it, from Kwesi to Offense at Kevin O'Connell, is dependent on whoever that pick is. Because if that pick is wrong, Kevin O'Connell will be fired. Kwesi might survive, but it will dictate how Vikings football is for the guy they choose after Cousins. I think we all know it's not going to be some bullshit journeyman free agent, because otherwise you just keep Cousins. And so whether that's Clayton Tune, whether that's Hendon Hooker, whether that's trading up to get Richardson, whether that's wait until next year, when you're bored on your own in the dark, like Kwesi, think about who that quarterback's going to be, because that will set the course for the next 5 years of Vikings football.
I love it.
Speaking of quarterbacks setting the course for the next years of a franchise's history, Aaron Rodgers is still a Green Bay Packer.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I'll talk about today, is a guy that used to wear green and gold and wants to wear green and black. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. You wouldn't expect him to really follow in his old man's footsteps, but he is.
He'll be here in 2024. I just gear up. He's coming. He is inevitable.
At some point, some reporter has to ask him, how do you feel about doing the Farvian path to a T? And I want to hear him just spin it and explain how he's not doing it.
Knowing him, he'll have a thing of like, he always loved to drink like the purple Kool-Aid or whatever in his press conference. He'll have like a crush and a purple crush soda, and he'll be like, "Oh, I have no intent," because he's just cryptic like that. Do you see, Charles? I have to say this because this has to be said as many times as possible. Charles Barkley said in an interview like a couple days ago that Aaron Rodgers is like the pretty girl who you have to keep saying "you're pretty" to. And I was like, that is beautifully spoken by Chuck. That is just perfect analysis from a basketball player, because that's
amen.
To a T. All right, well,
gentlemen, why don't you put me on, if you have the calendar open, put me on for like the week before the draft, and then we can really crunch how the board looks, because the board might even look different from right now to then. You could have fallers and risers, just like we were talking about Kyle Hamilton. He started to fall, and I was like, there's no way he gets to the Vikes. He's supposed to be the BPA in the whole draft. And then he he did, and they traded out of it. So I'd love to talk to you guys about the draft in what?
I would love it.
4 weeks,
I would love
4
it.
weeks from tonight or something?
4 weeks, yeah.
Sounds
like a plan.
All right, you guys take it easy.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Shop Unified Athletic Wear. Read VikingsTerritory.com and Purple PTSD. Follow us all on Twitter. And that's all we got. Skol, y'all.
Later.